I had a lot of fun finding free roguelike games on Steam, so I decided I'd show you some amazing free roguelike games on itch.io too. Here are the top 10 free roguelike games on itch.io you don't know about. Tempo Quest is a cross between an action roguelike and Dance Dance Revolution. You pick from one of 4 classes at the start of each run that all have different starting stats and attack types. Combat consists of playing mini rhythm games where you have to press the arrow keys in the correct order or hold it down in a specific direction. The more you successfully do this, the higher your combo multiplier will go, which is what's used to charge your special attack. Around the 4 distinct locations, you'll find shops where you can spend the money you get from killing enemies on upgrades and healing items. There's also dungeons you can enter that are either a combat challenge that gets you money or a boss fight. You have to beat the boss in each area as well as the final boss to beat the game. If you're looking for a unique fusing between a rhythm game and an action roguelike, then I recommend Tempo Quest. Dark Soil is a fast-paced action game where you fight enemies while trying to grow crops. You plant seeds on soil tiles, then use your watering can to grow them. Once the plants are grown, they become hostile and start spawning enemies, so the more plants you grow, the more enemies you have to deal with. There's 3 different seeds, which means there's 3 different enemy types. Well, technically 6 because the plants themselves can attack you, plus you have to deal with whatever enemies they spawn. You level up by growing seeds and killing the monsters, and every 5 levels you can go to this chest to upgrade your weapon and get back to full health. The game is really tense the entire time as you have to switch between your watering can, various seeds, and weapon, all while keeping track of your energy and water levels. If you're looking for a hectic blending between a farming game and an action combat game, then I recommend Dark Soil. Chicken Sword is an action roguelike where you play as a chicken who kills skeletons with a sword. Essentially, you're a warrior chicken who has to kill off waves of skeletons in order to defend all of the chicken coops. The skeletons will only attack the coops since you're invincible. You fight more and more skeletons in each wave until the skeletons eat too many chickens, causing this health meter to drop to 0. You're able to swing your sword obviously, as well as dodge around, though the dodge can be pretty finicky. Every time you kill a skeleton, you get gold, which you can spend at this chest for a passive upgrade. If you're looking for a simple action roguelike with a cute concept, then I recommend Chicken Sword. Peglin is a procedurally generated pachinko roguelike RPG where you play as a goblin who uses pachinko to defeat enemies in turn-based combat. You have to destroy as many pegs as possible per turn to kill the ever-encroaching enemies. Among the standard pegs, there's a refresh peg which will regenerate all pegs besides bombs. There's also crit pegs which will cause you to do way more damage. Lastly, there are bomb pegs which take 2 hits to detonate and deal damage to every enemy on screen. There's a variety of different orbs you get as you progress, with each one having a unique passive in how they interact with the pegs and in how they deal damage. After an encounter, you get to decide where to go next on the world map. Choosing to go to a fight risks you taking damage, but you are guaranteed an upgrade or health after. Chest spaces are guaranteed to be good, and mystery spaces could go either way. If you're looking for a unique pachinko roguelike, then I recommend Peglin. Robes is an arena shooter where you play as a wizard killing an ever-increasing amount of enemies while acquiring upgrades. Combat and movement is really polished yet hectic, during the later waves especially. There's several different enemy types all attacking you in different ways. Defeating all of the waves of enemies will earn you money. Before each set of waves, you can buy upgrades at the shop like new attacks and passive buffs. You can have up to 3 attacks at once, but an unlimited amount of passive buffs, all of which can be upgraded up to 3 times. A permanent addition to your moveset is a dodge roll, which is used to evade attacks. One thing that could have been better is the sound design, as it's pretty weak sounding. It would have greatly benefited from a heavy rock soundtrack and more punchy sound effects, but if you're looking for a tight arena shooter with a massive amount of upgrades, then I recommend Robes. Gun Knight is a roguelike inspired by Enter the Gungeon and Binding of Isaac, where you play as a knight venturing into a dungeon full of gun modifications. You start out only having access to a crappy starter pistol, but as you clear rooms of enemies, you'll collect gold and gun upgrades.
Wow!
The gun upgrades are the core of the game, as each one significantly changes the gun and thus how you approach every combat scenario. Sometimes after combat, there's a shop you can spend your money at for new upgrades and health. Enemy types are varied as well, so it took a while before it started feeling repetitive. Every 10 rooms you'll fight a boss. The bosses are well designed, but there's only 3 of them, so you end up repeating fights if you go for long enough. If you're looking for an Enter the Gungeon style roguelike with tons of over-the-top gun modifications, then I recommend Gun Knight. Die in the Dungeon is a dice building turn-based roguelike where you use dice to defeat enemies. You have to build the best combination of dice in order to conquer the dungeon. There's 4 different types of dice: red attack dice, blue armor dice, green healing dice, and purple boost dice, all of which are pretty self-explanatory except the boost dice. The boost dice adds whatever numbers on it to the other dice on the spaces it affects. You have to place your dice strategically on the board in combinations where you minimize damage taken but maximize damage dealt. Every room you clear, you'll be given 2 choices, of which include healing, removing a dice, upgrading a dice, or getting a new dice. I do wish there were more enemy types, as you see the same ones over time, but the moment-to-moment choices in combat combined with the difficult long-term build decisions was very engaging. If you're looking for a turn-based dice builder with a unique combat system, then I recommend Die in the Dungeon. Mobs Inc. is an action game where you play as an employee monster who has to kill humans, since the dungeon is becoming too popular with adventurers. You use your mouse to guide your movement and the direction you dash attack in. Every adventurer dies in one hit, but you have to space your attack correctly so there's no opening to hit you. There's a nice variety of adventurers that each attack in a different way. You play until you get 4 verbal warnings, and you get a warning every time you lose all 4 of your health points. You level up by killing adventurers, and every 20 levels you'll get a promotion, which gets you a new ability you can use in combat. The abilities are very satisfying to use and come in clutch during overwhelming situations. If you're looking for a frantic game with satisfying combat and abilities, then I recommend Mobs Inc. Overdisk is a top-down arena shooter where you destroy discs to gain upgrades in an attempt to survive for as long as possible. Discs will spawn in and lock onto you before firing. Every disc has a number which represents how many times it has to bounce off walls before it's destroyed. You can circumvent this issue by just hitting them directly into the portal, which destroys them instantly. You level up by destroying discs, and every level gets harder, throwing more discs at you with higher numbers to deal with. Every 10 levels you get full health and receive an upgrade, like a new weapon or a character buff, so your abilities scale with the game's difficulty. There's no new upgrades after level 50 though, which limits its replayability, but if you're looking for a hectic score chasing game, then I recommend Overdisk. Roguelite isn't just a pun, it's also a 2D platformer roguelite where the deeper you go into a cavern, the darker it gets, and you only have your arrows to light the way. You progress through the progressively harder levels of the cavern, trying to collect as many coins as you can get along the way. Enemies and spikes will hurt you, so you have to use your arrows to kill enemies as well as light the way. The arrow's light will slowly decrease the longer you have it drawn, so you have to search for arrows and health pickups as you go. Every time you die, you get to spend whatever coins you collected on upgrades, making each subsequent run easier. If you're looking for a 2D platformer roguelite with a unique concept centered around light, then I recommend Roguelite. Those were the top 10 free roguelike games on itch.io you didn't know about. I'll have my playlist of free itch.io games you don't know about linked in the description, as well as my videos about free roguelike games on Steam. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe to see more videos like this in the future.